single game with the AAA midgets. You guys, I think, won the Air Canada Cup. And I remember, what were you working on with them? And I was so curious, and you said a lot of 2-on-1s. We were working on 2-on-1s. Remember that like today, that conversation, never will forget it.
Well, I certainly enjoyed over the years watching you grow through the routes, and it's awesome to see what you're doing and enjoying and your role and all that sort of stuff. I had a question about the European game in reference to the ages of the kids in the growth of their development. What have you seen that they do differently in Europe? And what I'm talking specifically about is, I think in Canada here, we have too many younger kids, like 15, 16, 17-year-olds. We're hindering their development because they're playing against stronger 19, 20-year-olds.
Yeah.
Is the model in a lot of the European world there, do they allow the kids to stay in their age brackets longer, or do they rush them up like what we're really doing here far too much? And how much of an effect does it have on their actual overall development of that skill at that time?
Yeah. So again, absolutely fantastic question, and you speak the truth. I can speak about Czech Republic, and I can speak a little bit about Sweden and Finland because I live there and I go there quite a bit. So other countries I don't want to speak about, I don't know much about. But Czech Republic, we do the same thing as in Canada. So if you are any good, you move up, you play with 2 years, 3 years older kids. Parents are pushing, he needs to play with the older kids. And so what happens is not only that the player is not developing elite skills, because from a first line player, suddenly you play on the third line, and from playing power play, penalty kill, and extensive ice time, you just play average ice time 15 minutes. But the lack of leadership, we don't have any leadership in Czech Republic. And I believe what you said is probably because of that. Those great kids, those skilled kids, don't spend any time on a team that they can actually lead, that they are actually relied upon, that they have to put the team on their back. So not only the skill and the tactical and the social aspect, but definitely I feel leadership is lacking because of that. Now, Sweden, I know one thing. I had the honor to work with Henrik Zetterberg for just a week once in Detroit. And he was telling his story, and he said, when I was 16, 17, I wasn't very good. I was just an average midget player. And I've never thought I will, be making money with hockey. But, they still let me play. I was playing on the, top team, the club team. I was never invited to the national teams, never ever any provincial teams, nothing. But, I was then 17, and one summer I got stronger and a little bit faster, and suddenly I became way better player, and I got invited to national team when I was 18. So that would never happen in Czech Republic, and I think even in Canada you would have tough time when by 17, 18, 16 you would not be a very good player invited to those camps. It would be hard for that player to make it. So I know that in Sweden and in Finland, they are very, very, very careful how those players develop and have a lot of patience because they have low numbers, just like the Czechs. So they cannot afford to waste that talent. And, I don't want to be speaking. I think in Finland you have to have exceptions. And I think to play with older players, and there is only I know when I was working for the Czech Federation, they were saying that there was 2 or 1 exception a year that would be granted by the federation. It has to be granted by the federation that you can play 1 year up. And not even the teams don't even ask for it. In Czech Republic, we have 55 exceptions every year. Everybody wants to go up. And there was 1 or 2 are asking the federation. So that shows me that the teams and organizations are mature enough that they know that playing at your level, unless you're Sidney Crosby or somebody, is probably the best thing for long-term development.
So it's kind of similar. So what we're seeing here then, eh?
Yeah, like in our country, yes. In our country, there's a huge push. Everybody's impatient and everybody wants to play up, up, up. And like I said, no time to develop those skills.
I think it's a good point, Thomas. You mentioned the loss of leadership skills. My time years ago in the Western League and in all the discussion we have, the discussion generally centers on the tactical side. Like if you're a 16-year-old trying to figure out, should I play in the Western League and play 8 minutes a game, or should I stay in midget AAA and play 20, 22 minutes a game? It often only centers on the tactical part. And as you mentioned, again, there's maybe a little bit of a loss of offensive confidence or skill development. It's hard to find. But I don't think I've ever heard anybody mention the loss of the development of leadership skills. But it is pretty significant, pretty huge.
I also believe that, for example, scoring is a habit. It's a habit. And so I had many discussions with players from the Western League or midgets to go too early, and they would score, 50, 60 goals at midget, and then they go to Western League and would score like 2 or none. So what does it do? What does that do to your confidence and your habit? It's a loss of habit. So yeah, I am all with you, Kerry. I believe that it's important, unless you are exceptional. There is exceptional players that
and they usually lead the league in scoring. So I mean, or they're the top 10 scorer, top 5 defensemen. Those, I'm not talking about those. I'm asking that question from a development of individual skills standpoint. If you have 100 kids and the majority of them are moving up, what percentage will actually gain from moving up versus developing the confidence and the skill, and dominating and creating those good habits.
Exactly.
Versus the ones that, you lose that habit. And that's, it's a big question in the game, from what I'm hearing overall.
And you see it, like one skill is skating. Just working with hundreds of players over the years that move up too quickly, they shorten their stride. Why? Because the game is way quicker where they play and they can't keep up. So they think they have to move their feet quicker. That was the first thing we noticed, when they came to Portland. It's like he skates differently. Or when you move somebody too soon from junior to the NHL or AHL, their decisions become more panicky because they're not ready. It's too fast, too big. So now their body language and their habits are changing. Their perception is changing. So it's
the deception part is tougher when they're in that modem. Like, to help kids with deception, like, when they're in that modem where they're always trying to survive, it probably doesn't build that deception sort of skill that is now becoming more and more valuable. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely, because deception to me is when you feel comfortable, when you've like, the way I feel it, it's like you have time. I have time to play with you a little bit. I'm going to look here, I'm going to pass there. That's a state of mind. And like you say beautifully, if I'm constantly surviving, which means I'm in a state of fear, I'm afraid, I have no time to play. Deception is playing. I'm showing you here, but I'm going there. That's play. That's what makes the game fun. And when I'm surviving, like you say, I'm not having any fun. I just don't want to get hit. I don't want to make any mistakes. I want to get it deep, and I want to get off the ice. That's.
I don't want to be minus, because I might not get the dress the next night.
There you go. There you go. So I'm a big proponent, and have seen in Canada, experienced many sad stories. Very talented midget players going too early, sitting 1 year as a 16-year-old, as a 17-year-old getting injured, and then starting playing 2 years later and becoming a 4th line player who ends up in junior B.
Thomas, I'd like to interrupt here. Sammy Joe is on, and all I've been thinking here is the female game. And before we go to Dave Barrett, I don't want this to take over the conversation. I want to go to Dave's question, but the idea of acceleration is sort of like 60 girls are playing boys hockey in Calgary. They're not on the two elite 13-year-old girls teams. That's a form of perceived acceleration because boys hockey is better. And back in the day when Haley played boys hockey, there was hitting. And to me, it may have helped her development to a degree, but the hitting aspect was definitely deterred it. So I just wanted to get the point in and have Sammy to have some questions related to this topic because, you know, now there's a female pro league. They're trying to get scholarships. They're trying to make the national team. How can they be the best they can be in doing things the right way at the right time? So we'll get into that. Dave, you had your hand up, please, Dave.
I just wanted to build a little bit on the conversation. I had the privilege of coaching Sidney Crosby when he was 14 on my junior A team. He came up as an affiliate player, and he came up in October to play a game, and he was okay, but not great. And then we had him up in January, and he was telling my 20-year-old players where to go on the ice, and they were all listening to him. It was amazing to see in a 3-month period by him staying back and playing midget hockey instead of playing junior hockey, how much confidence he had and how much his game had grown so that he was perceived by a bunch of 20-year-olds as a 14-year-old leader, to support holding people back a little bit. And, you know, but he's an exceptional player. My question, though, is if we're going to see potential changes at Hockey Canada in the leadership area, I wonder if there is an opportunity now to perhaps change our practice of accelerating young players up in age groups by taking a more Swedish or Finnish approach to it that Thomas, you explained. And whether the group here, I don't know Hockey Canada at all, but I'm wondering whether the group here, through your experiences with Hockey Canada, could potentially see that as an outcome of some of the challenges, let's just say, that they've been facing over the last 6 months.